Hello, friends. Welcome to another installment of Soup of the Day podcast. I was asked recently, what is Soup of the Day? Are we talking about food? No, it's Soup of the Day, as in SUPT, Superintendent of the Day. And we're just kind of talking about some things that are on our mind across our district, across our fellowship, things that are going on around the world. And today I am joined with a missionary associate serving in the country of France. Kristin Moore is here with us today. And one of the things that I really love about being the superintendent is also having the missions director portfolio. I love missionaries. I love missions. And, you know, the old saying, once a missionary, always a missionary. And so I think in those terms. And so when we have missionary friends here with us, I want to hear their story about what God is doing through their efforts. And with Kristin Moore today, she is working there in France. So Kristin, will you say hello to the Georgia district?
Well, thank you, Pastor John, for having me here today. I'm kind of excited. This is the first time I've ever done a podcast before, so this is new for me. And well, in France, I do kids ministry. That's my main focus, has been. I've been on the field for 2 years now. And basically, in Europe, we have training hubs. And that's been my first 2 years, getting training to be a part of a church planning team with the National Church, the French Assemblies of God, and also learning how to minister to the secular people of Europe, and getting practical training with kids ministry in a French church. Last September, we started partnering with a fairly new church plant that was pretty close to Grenoble, where I was living at the time. And so I got to see what a French church plant was like and go alongside them, see what their kids ministry is like, and practice my French along with that, because all French, no English. So that was a great opportunity for us.
So Grenoble is out of the tourist area, so it's all French. So
Yeah,
I was in Toulouse recently visiting one of our other missionary families there, and in Toulouse, I'm used to traveling to international cities where if you ask someone, "Hey, do you speak English?" Typically the answer is yes.
right.
Yeah, there was nobody.
No.
Nobody. It's like, no, not really. And so that was kind of fun. So you're really having to use a lot of French.
Yes. I try my best. The learning process is proven a little difficult for me. I think some of that is my age, unfortunately, but God is great.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's not make fun of old people struggling
No,
with things. No,
statistically speaking,
okay,
yeah,
all
the
right.
closer you are to 40, the harder it is for you to learn a new language. So, but God is good. It's a slow go, but you take one step at a time. And so that's what I've been doing.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And so the national church there that you're working with, the
Mhm.
French Assemblies of God,
Right.
they really enjoy having missionary personnel come over and serve in the churches. And so how did you wind up doing this?
Okay. So, about 5 years ago, I did a MAPS, um, assignment in Paris with an international church there. I went for 3 months, and that kind of got my foot in the door, gave me that extra confirmation that that is where God wanted me. And the original plan was for me to go back to that international church outside of Paris to be their kids director. And but the missionary that I was going to be working with got engaged and came off the field. And so I was talking with my area director, because we had to figure out a new plan for what I was going to do. And I was kind of in limbo for a while because we weren't sure what was going to happen with the international church. And so he ended up giving me two options. One of those options was Grenoble, which I prayed about, and I felt like that's where God was leading me to. And so, yeah, which really coincides with what God told me before I even left to go on the MAPS assignment. And God was telling me that I was going to be working and training with the national church,
Okay.
and planting kids ministries. Because up until the last 5 or so years, kids ministry has not been a priority, even in the national church there. So there, with the new church plants and the younger generation coming in and pastoring, that has been more of a focus in their ministries.
That
So
is wonderful.
yeah.
Well, and yes, gender specific, age specific ministries for kids is not the common thing
Hmm.
that we see in a lot of
Right.
churches throughout Europe. The idea is it's you minister to the whole family at the same time, and that's sometimes certainly not conducive to the generations that's coming up.
Hmm.
And so we're talking about a little bit about what you're doing. So you're doing children's ministry there in Grenoble, and you felt like the Lord's calling you to missions. Sometimes I think it's good for us to answer the why. Why missions? Why do you feel this need to go and to minister to people in a foreign context in a different country?
Growing up in the States here, I think a lot of times we take for granted the availability of the gospel. And Europe is now considered the dark continent. And access to the gospel is so minuscule. France in itself, statistically, 1% or less have a personal relationship with God. And when I started learning these different things about France, God called me to France when I was about 24 years old, and I didn't know a whole lot about the religious side of things as far as where the church was. And, I grew up thinking France is a Catholic nation, they're close to God. They have the church, and that is really, the Catholic Church is there, but it's not as active as people think it is. And so, the more I learned about France, the more love my heart had for the country, and the bigger my heart grew. And God gave me that compassion for them. And I came into kids ministry. I hate to say kicking and screaming, but but it was not something that I really wanted to do, and God kind of pushed me into that. And at first, it was, it was really tough. I didn't communicate with kids very well in the beginning. I was like almost scared of of little kids. But as time went on, the more experience I had, the more I worked up under 3 different kids pastors. All 3 had different ways of doing kids ministry, and so I learned a lot up under those 3 kids pastors. And so, but the more experience I got, the longer I was with kids, the easier it got, and the bigger my heart grew for those kids. And especially when I learned that kids ministry was not a big focus in France, that even curriculum for the kids ministries that they did have was almost non-existent. It's very hard. They have to put together their own material. They have to translate it from other languages into theirs.
Wow.
Where they can get it from. And so it was hard for us. The church in Grenoble that I was part of wasn't a bilingual church. And so we had English and French kids to cater to and to minister to. And a lot of the times in the beginning, we had to translate it for the French kids. And it's very difficult to do that. It's very tedious. And finally we found a church that did free curriculum that had like 20 different languages that was translated into. But yeah, so knowing that, how I grew up in the church and how kids grow up in the church now, even here in the States, with all of those things available to them just readily, and how they do kids ministries today is just amazing.
Yes.
Like, it's totally different from when I grew up.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, man, I love watching kids pastors today, and the things that they are able to do for their kids. And the kids over there don't have that.
Right.
And so being able to go in and hopefully build their curriculum with them, help them with that, and introduce some of our ideas. We don't want to, the purpose of us being there is not to take over, but to come alongside them.
Right.
And so being able to do that and being able to part of that and seeing kids grow up, learning the gospel and learning that Jesus loves them, even though, and he listens to their prayers. And so that's the reason.
Well, and that is a very personal gospel. So
Yeah.
you mentioned about, man, I kind of went into this kicking and screaming, and that's not the first time I've heard that. Not just related to children's ministry, but any type at times. And I think the main thing with that is God. God doesn't call us to places on a map.
Mhm.
He calls us to people.
Right.
And so when we begin to work with those people, the children,
Mhm.
and you see the need and you see their openness to the gospel and you see life change occurring. Yeah, I probably wouldn't categorize myself as the best children's pastor ever, because I don't relate well to small kids and whatnot. I kind of struggle with that. But when you have a heart for people,
Mhm.
you are able to overcome those barriers
Right.
and those likes and dislikes because you have a heart for people. And so it sounds like what you're saying is God has put you in a place where he can use you in a profound way. And
Absolutely.
you're seeing this openness to the gospel. I am familiar with other churches that have and missionaries that have done work in France, and people are hungry.
Mhm. Yeah.
They're hungry for the gospel. They've gone so long without what we would call, a powerful message being shared with them. That they are open, and so here you are doing ministry with these kids, and you're seeing a lot of results. So tell me a story. What's a story that you could share with us that really kind of drives home what you're doing there?
Um, I had there was a lady in our church. She's, I think, around my age or a few years older than me. She had two kids. She's got two kids. She was going through a really bad divorce, and my heart just broke for her and her kids. The husband was abusive to her and the kids both. Um, and for a while, the kids lived with her parents. They didn't live with either
Mm.
either parent. They lived with their grandparents, and it was just a really tough situation. And she came to me one day, and because with kids, sometimes you leave you leave church and you're like, were they listening to me? Did they hear anything I said? And because sometimes, especially with the smaller kids, their
Yeah,
attention
you wonder
span,
about it.
you wonder if they even heard anything you said. And it brings me joy, and it confirms what I'm doing when a parent comes to me and says, hey, my kid was able to tell me the story that you told them. They were able to tell me um, what you talked about in kids' church. And she came to me one Sunday, and she was like, "When you lead a kid to Jesus, when a child gets saved, um, is it different than with an adult?" And I told her, I thought for a minute, wanted to make sure I said it right. Um, I said, no.
That's right.
I said, sometimes with kids, you might have to, the words you use might be a little bit more simple. I said, but telling Jesus that you accept him as your Lord and Savior is very straightforward. It doesn't have to be this prolific proclamation. I said it can be very simple. And she told me, she's like, he came to me and asked me, how can I have Jesus with me all the time?
Wow. Wow.
And so that just, for me to have been there for at least a year and having a parent come up to me and say, my kid wants to have Jesus with him all the time.
That's incredible.
That was my first experience with that with a kid. And that, that impacted me
Well, it
in
makes
a
it
great way.
worthwhile. Yes.
It does.
And hearing those words, hey, how can I have Jesus with me
Mhm.
all the time? It really drives home what we're doing
Mhm.
as missionaries on the field. That hey, we are sowing seed,
Mhm.
and sometimes we do more sowing than we do reaping at times.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so you're plowing new fields, and you're praying that God would bring the harvest. And here you see that. And so I know that right now you're home. I say
Right.
home.
Yeah.
I remember as a missionary when I would talk about going home. After a while, home wasn't here. Home
Yeah.
was back in Beit Hanina, and so when I talk about going home, so I use that term loosely. So you are in the States. How about that? I'm
Yes.
in the States for a while, and you're itinerating. You're hoping to get back to the field by what time?
Well, my return ticket is for the end of September.
Okay.
Um, but you know how itineration goes.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you get your funds raised by the time your goal,
Yep.
and sometimes you don't, which is fine because it's all in God's timing. Um, I God gave me such an extreme feeling of peace over itineration for myself this year,
Okay.
and obviously, I want to get back as soon as I possibly can.
Of course.
Um,
Your heart is there.
yes.
And I remember those days where the work is basically put on pause
Mhm.
while you're itinerating. In those, it's necessary. You
Mhm.
do have to come back and raise the funds because the church is there. And just for those that are listening, the idea of tithing and giving is a foreign
Mm.
concept in the
Absolutely.
local evangelical church in France. And so you're not able to sustain the work because they don't have the manpower and resources to do it.
Right.
So they're dependent upon Kristin
Right.
to raise funds here with churches in the West, in the United States, and to fund those missionaries to go back. So we're looking at the end of September. So the clock is ticking. And
Right.
so where are you on your percentage or amount of funding that you need to get back to the field?
Right now, I'm at right at 80%
Okay.
funded.
So 20% to get you across the finish line. And then do you also have a cash budget that you need to reach as well?
I do not have a cash budget. I
Okay.
have the cash that I need.
Okay.
Uh,
So 20%
mhm.
will get you across the finish line.
Yes. I'm trying to
And what would be the average dollar amount?
I'm trying to think of that in my head. About It's about $1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
$1,000 in monthly support
Right. That's correct.
to get you across
Mhm.
the line. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you something about Georgia churches, and I am proud of this. I tell it across the nation. When people ask me about what is it like to be the superintendent in Georgia, I'm going to tell you we are the little engine that could. We're not a large district, but we do outsized things when it comes to missions.
Mhm.
And it's because pastors and churches understand. And we have a long history of being profound missions givers. And so $1,000 a month between now and the end of September, we're talking July and August and going into September and in this next week coming up, that gives us some pretty good time
Yeah.
to be able to do that and help you get across the finish line and get back to what God has called you to do. And that's the
Right.
thing, is that we want to get you back on the field, preaching the gospel, sharing the good news with children in France, and raising up that church to be strong and productive. And so, pastors, you guys are watching out there. She needs $1,000 in support to get her back on the field. And I know it in my heart that we have some great churches who have a heart for that and want to help get you across that finish line and back to France. Now, I will say this, though. Here's my deal, is that if I come back to France, I need a really good croissant. And so when I was walking through one of the Toulouse, when I was there, I happened up on a bakery. And I'm just going to tell you, you have never had a croissant until you get one in a French bakery. It will change your life.
Yes.
It fell apart, and as I was pulling it started, it was so flaky. Anyway, I the reason I'm talking about this because I'm hungry right now. I didn't eat breakfast. But no, here's the deal: is that if we come and see what God is doing there, we got to have a croissant. Can we do that? Can we
Yes,
make that happen?
absolutely.
Okay, you hear that,
Absolutely.
pastors? If you go to France and you go to Grenoble, there's a croissant waiting on you with your name on it. So we believe in what you're doing. We're praying that God will help you get back to your field there. And one last thing. So as we're wrapping this up, if you had something that you would really like to share with the churches in Georgia, maybe you don't have a window or an opportunity to go to a congregation and share on your heart with a pastor or whatnot, what would be the thing that you would really want them to know about the ministry that you're doing?
Well, now that I've gone through the training in Grenoble, I'm actually when I go back, I'm going to be moving
Oh,
to a
okay.
different city.
All right.
And I'm going to be moving to the opposite corner, northwest France,
Okay.
in the region of Brittany,
Okay.
which is right up under Normandy. I'll be helping with a brand new church plant,
Come on.
national church plant,
Come on.
which I'm very excited about. And I'll be with a new church plant. It's all hands on deck. Everybody's doing different things, but my main focus will be the kids ministry there. And eventually, I will be helping other churches as well, new church plants.
Fantastic.
And that's a projection, that's a future thing. But with the region of Brittany, it's the least reached region in France. It has 1.6 million people and only 4 evangelical churches.
Are you kidding me? Wow. So a brand new church plant with the French National AG,
Right.
a brand new work,
Mhm.
and you're going to launch a new children's ministry there
Yes.
in a region that is unreached.
Mhm.
And so that's all the more reason for us to help you get back.
Right.
Now, when are you guys thinking about launching, or when is the proposed launch date?
We're hoping in the beginning of the year, hopefully spring at the latest of next
so
year.
around Easter or something like that.
Yeah.
Man, we got to get you back there and get you guys working. So we're going to be praying for that.
Thank you.
And just asking the Lord to swing wide the gate of opportunity there in Brittany and your new church plant. And so thank you, Kristin, for coming. Pastors, we're going to have at the bottom of the screen here some information on how to get in touch with her. Also, we'll be sharing an email to your email account here pretty soon about how to get in touch. If you want to support, which we want you to do, jump on board. Let's get her across the finish line with that $1,000. And let's get her back to France, preaching the good news to those kids. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode.